Hello, lovely How to Fail listeners and viewers. This is just to let you know that if you want a peek behind the curtain to find out the last time that Kate Winslet spoke to Leo or how much sex Vogue Williams considers to be normal, then you can listen to my subscriber series. Just follow the link in the show notes and we will see you there. I'm delighted to bring you this extra special episode of How to Fail with the wonderful Sally Phillips, recorded in front of a live audience at London's Barbican.
That's the secret to Shazza, basically. She's not Bridget, and so she doesn't get to snog Colin Firth or Hugh Grant or Leo Woodall or Patrick Dempsey or Chiwetel Ejiofor, and consequently spends 25 years saying
My guest tonight is distinctly uneasy with being called a national treasure, but it's hard not to think of Sally Phillips as part of the fabric of our culture. She has appeared in a string of the most influential and hilarious comedy series of all time, from the sketch show she co-created, Smack the Pony, to Miranda, I'm Alan Partridge, The Thick of It, and Veep, naming but a few. She's also appeared in all 4 of the Bridget Jones movies as one of the titular heroine's best friends, Shazza. It could almost have been very different. After graduating with a first in Italian and linguistics from Oxford University, Phillips was set on studying for a PhD in spaghetti westerns. Eventually, she saw sense, sort of, and opted to go to clown school instead. From there, her course was set. Alongside this busy and thriving career, Phillips has also been an important voice in the neurodivergent community. The mother of 3 neurodivergent sons, the eldest of whom, Ollie, has Down syndrome, she has been a tireless campaigner for disability rights. Both she and Ollie are now patrons of the Down Syndrome Association. I am quite often failing, Phillips says, or getting it wrong, or feeling like you've got it wrong and definitely wanting to get it right, definitely wanting to be good. But we all fail, and we all fail differently, don't we? London, please welcome to the stage the one and only Sally Phillips.
appropriately enough, I nearly missed the chair there and sat on the floor. That would have been good, wouldn't it?
Forever on brand. Bridget Jones, do you mind if we start there?
Not at all.
Because I, like many people here, have watched and adored every single one of those movies. And the latest one in the instalment and the last has just come out.
Yes.
And I wonder what it was like for you reconnecting with your character 25 years after the first movie. And not only your character, but all of the other actors 25 years on.
Yeah, I felt very emotional because you kind of, I mean, it's such a heavenly world, the Helen Fielding, Richard Curtis working title world. And it's not one that I live in. And you just can't help thinking back to, so it was my 30th birthday on the day of the read-through for the first film. And I walked in and I was like, you know, my career was going like this, like it's just going to get better from here. And I looked over and I was the only person in Britain who hadn't seen Pride and Prejudice. And I saw Colin Firth and I thought, he's mine. I am in the right room, I thought. My life is going swell. And obviously Colin was taken. And so was Hugh. And that's the secret to Shazza, basically. She's not Bridget, and so she doesn't get to snog Colin Firth or Hugh Grant or Leo Woodall or Patrick Dempsey or Chiwetel Ejiofor, and consequently spends 25 years saying
Yeah. You do swear exceptionally well in those movies.
Thank you.
Is it true that you initially tried out for Bridget?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I did. Well, I did. And I had... I felt a bit ambivalent. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I could never have played it. But I was it. Just because you are it doesn't mean you can play it. As you can see by Renee playing it so well, being Texan Norwegian. And I remember Sharon Maguire, the director, saying, the character needs to be drunk quite a lot. How do you think you'd do that? Me saying, I don't know, I might get drunk. which was the wrong answer. And we spent quite a lot of time trading stories about how we'd been dumped. And I think at the time I had just been dumped by an artist who had told me that since he'd been going out with me, he hadn't had enough time to go swimming.
Oh my God.
Was
savage.
Like so savage.
Wow.
Like, I am not stopping you swimming.
No.
Swim all you like. I'll meet you in the pool. But yeah, anyway, so it was an unsuccessful audition for Bridget. And then I auditioned for Jude as well, so they were just playing chess with the pieces. But they were making the movie before Renee came on board. And once she came on board, it became an entirely different thing. You know, so I feel very lucky to be in it. But your original question was, how did it feel going back? Well, the second one, I guess, wasn't that emotional because it was pretty soon after. But number 3 and number 4, there were such long gaps that you were catching up such a lot of life. Like, people had got divorced and lost partners and lost children and, you know, you were checking in on big things. And I felt very emotional this last time because I was just thinking how differently those 25 years had gone. So I turned 30 on the day of the first read-through and I'm about to turn 55. And those 25 years just turned out so differently to what I was expecting. And I've really enjoyed it, but it's been, you know, I've felt a bit sometimes like a plough going through the earth. You know, I mean, obviously lots of people have life a lot harder than I do, but there have been difficult things. And I don't think Shazza's had such a difficult life, to be honest. She was the one who played it well. She was the one was the one who was always single and always swearing. And I think she only really went out with one person, married him, and they were happy.
The good thing about 25 years passing is that Colin Firth is now single, Sally.
Colin Firth is now dead. Oh, in real life. Oh, sorry.
I mean, don't do that to us at the Barbican. 2,000 people almost had a panic attack. No. Colin Firth, alive and well. Single, but you're not.
But is he single? I mean...
Oh, I don't know.
No, I'm not single. I mean, ships that pass in the night.
Exactly. What could have been? What could have been? Okay, I actually also, before we get onto your failures, I want to ask you about my favourite comedy of all time, which is Veep. Because you play the now ex-Prime Minister of Finland.
Finland, yeah.
I won't be able to pronounce her name properly.
Minna Hakkinen, the former Finnish Prime Minister, yeah.
I think the funny thing about her is that she's a character with ostensibly no sense of humour.
Yeah.
Is that fun to play?
Autistic Barbie. apart from, you know, not short, everything a pound shop Barbie. Yeah, so much fun to play. Because she's got an encyclopedic knowledge. She's like a, you know, QI with no camaraderie, no laughter track. And she's just full of useless information. And it was so much fun. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who plays the president, vice president and then president, it was one of my all-time heroines. She was just so brilliant in Seinfeld. And when I started doing comedy, there weren't that many women doing comedy. There weren't that many women looking, you know, normal, doing comedy, because you had to make yourself look masculine or strange, or you had to explain to people visually that it was okay to laugh at you. And she was just such a heroine. I was so nervous going into that. I was like, I've got to be Finnish, and I've never been to Finland, and I don't know anything about Finnish politics. And I knew Armando did a lot of improv. It's like, how am I going to improv in Finnish about Finnish politics? So I read 5 books on Finland and cyber-stalked Jyrki Katainen, the Finnish Prime Minister. And then Julia and I just found we made each other laugh a lot. And so it was heaven.
What you were saying there about women in comedy and what a long road that has been to be sort of taken on your own terms as being funny as a human. Smack the Pony, looking back on it, was revolutionary for its time. I mean, it started in, 1999? And were you aware that it was revolutionary when you were doing it?
We just thought it was going to fail. Yeah, we just thought it was going to fail. I thought it was going to be a disaster. I remember going to bed in a, I guess, depression or fear state. And yeah, that day, I was like, we devised and workshopped ideas for quite a while. And then I bumped into Doon McKeon, who wasn't in it at that stage, on the stairs in Talkback. And I went, we're doing this women's comedy show, and it's so bad that no woman is ever going to be allowed to tell a joke ever again on TV. I said, come and do it. Please come and do it. And she got her agent to ring, and she came and did it. So I went to bed for 2 days. When I came back, Doon McKeon was in it. That was good. But yeah, we thought it was going to be... We were so frightened. We were just so frightened of letting womankind down that we had really, really strict rules about, the amount of time we put into trying to think of a title that didn't sound like it was about periods. You wouldn't believe it. Like months and months. And then we ended up with this ridiculous title that no one can remember. Everyone calls it Drop the Dead Donkey. And it turns out that people think that's a sexual practice anyway, which it isn't as far as I know.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yes.
Not yet.
Before we get on to your failures, what was clown school like?
I've been to lots.
Have you?
Yeah, I love clown school.
Do a humble brag. How many have you been to?
Humble brag. Because the thing about clown school is that nobody talks about clown school. No, the thing about clown school is that if you're someone who feels like you get things wrong in your life, at clown school, getting things wrong is getting things right. So wearing clothes that are a bit wrong, that's correct. And if you get something wrong in an improv, people applaud. They applaud your mistakes. And so it's something that a lot of women find and really enjoy. And I know, and there's no tiny cars, there's no buckets of glitter. There are sometimes red noses, but it's just a relief.
Yes.
Is what clown school is. So it's sort of opposite of Stanislavski, where Stanislavski you might be putting loads of things on, limps and histories and whatever, and clown is just taking it all off and just failing and being as small and pathetic as you are, but with a kind of optimistic spirit. And I think it's just a really useful, tool in acting, making your acting more, immediate or something.
Fascinating. I'm so glad I asked this question, because what a great school in acting, but as you say, also in life, the liberation.
I've never had that response to an answer to a clown question. People have always glazed over. You should come.
I actually really want to.
There is a clown conference in Bristol. The state, how do you deal with the state of the world as clowns? What can we do? And I'm obsessed.
Wow.
With Clowns Without Borders, Clowns Sans Frontières, who go to war zones.
Oh my God.
And on their website they go, we don't know if we make it any better.
Yeah.
But, we're doing what we can. Oi, oi. And why not?
Let's get on to your failures.
Yes.
Your first failure.
So many. I mean, it was so hard to choose.
The first failure, failures of courage.
Yes.
And you actually gave me an itemised list.
Did I?
Yes. What does it mean to you, that failure of courage?
I mean, I feel like where I have been apparently brave is because I haven't thought things through beforehand. And if given the option, I will generally try and get out of it. So that ranges, there's so many examples of it. One would be, when I think there's humiliation, don't know why I'm here, when I think there's humiliation, I tend to try and get out of it. One example would be, I used to love playing the flute, and I probably had social issues, and I used to play the flute all the time instead of talking to people. And
just at dinner parties and stuff, just whip it out.
I used to lock myself. I used to could do that. Used to lock myself in the toilet and play the flute because I liked the echo for hours at a time, and did my grades very young. And my flute teacher put me forward for Young Musician of the Year, and I would never have. I would never have got anywhere, and I realised quite quickly I wasn't going to get anywhere, and I didn't go to the first round, and I wish I had. I really wish I'd gone. But there's so many examples of things like that. Another one is just starting out in comedy, and I was at a friend's house, 2 guys, and I was looking through the Edinburgh Festival programme, and I was like, gosh, there's women going up doing shows with just them. It's like it's not just men doing stand-up. And I said, maybe I should do that. And one of them said, they both burst out laughing. And one of them said, what would you call it? The Sally Phillips experience. And they cried laughing. And I went off into a back room and I cried and then came back and pretended it hadn't happened. And I never did it. So I've never done my own thing. And I wish I had. I really wish I had had that courage then. So what I've done my whole career, please God don't let me cry because that would be so pathetic. But what I've done my whole career is I've fitted into behind other people and with other people. So I didn't ever do stand-up. I did protected stand-up in a thing called Club Zarathustra, run by Simon Munnery, where it was all the guys, Stuart Lee, Simon Munnery, Julian Barrett, people like that. And I would go in and I would be Simon Munnery's joke explainer. And I would be funny and I would write as much material as everybody else, but it wasn't, I would never do it on my own. And consequently, I suppose I've worked really hard, and I think I am one of the best straight men in the business, in that I'm very good at getting chemistry going with people in comedies and supporting the other person. I don't really like looking at the camera myself. My worst thing, well, two worst things. One thing is doing murders. They're really difficult as a comedian.
I'm glad you added as a comedian.
As a comedian, yeah. In the shows. Yeah, not real murders. But the other thing is, like, at the end of a TV show where the lead character looks out at the ocean and the credits roll, which is just the camera in your face, just in your face for like 3 minutes. And I can't do it. I really can't do it. I have to be looking at someone or sort of clinging on to someone. Have to have complicity with someone in a scene because I am really afraid.
Or you need that sense of connection and interaction because you're curious about the world. But I'm interested in this fear of failure piece and how much that's tied in with feeling you have to be perfect, because you are someone who is also a high flyer, having gone to Oxford, got a first. How much of that played into it, that fear of getting it wrong?
Pass. Yeah, I don't. Yes, I mean, I suppose there must be a driven thing. I think I'm really scared of judgment. I think because my dad worked for British Airways. We moved around a lot as kids. So when I came back to the UK, everything was wrong. So people would be nice. They go, oh, cool trainers, like green flash trainers. They go, where did you get them? I go, oh, just, Sheen Sports. And then you'd realise later they were laughing at you. And so you learn to become, loads of actors and comedians have had this kind of upbringing. You sort of learn to fit in and you've had it as well, haven't you?
Yes.
You become a kind of observer. And I suppose if you're exerting a lot of effort into fitting in, then not fitting in becomes
Scary.
It becomes a thing anyway. Yeah.
One of the things that you put in your itemised list under this failure...
I think I texted that from Australia in the middle of the night.
I mean, it's
so
great.
I can't quite remember what's on it. Did I put procrastination on there?
No, you put marriage.
Oh, yes. No, my marriage. So, yes. Failure of courage. Yeah, that was I've now come to see that. So my marriage failed. And one of the reasons there were many reasons it failed, but one of the reasons it failed, I think, was that I was absolutely not prepared. I was so frightened of it ending and me being on my own with 1, 2, 3 children, and I was so sure that I couldn't manage that. Turns out I can.
Yay. Yes, you can.
That I wouldn't talk about the possibility of it ending. So we could never actually talk about what was wrong, because I don't think you get the freedom to really examine what's going wrong unless you can look at it in that depth, think about it not being there. And you can't appreciate what's right unless you can appreciate. So I would just shut down the conversation and wouldn't. God, this is a tough podcast, isn't it?
It's light and shade, light and shade.
It's like therapy in front of 1,900 people. But yes, I wouldn't. I would do anything to avoid the conversation. So I'd only talk about positive things we could do, so courses we could go on, and that kind of thing. And I would get very angry when we went to a therapist who said, "Well, do you actually want to be together?" I would be like, "No, you don't. No, that's not what we're prepared to talk about. We're not talking about that." And I just kept going. We're having peculiar challenges because we've got an unusual family, so we've got unusual challenges. But we don't need to talk. We really should have talked about that much earlier.
If you could give your past self advice, or indeed anyone in this audience who might be going through something similar relationship-wise, what advice do you think you'd give yourself?
I think I would say that divorce isn't always failure. And I suppose I've come to see life force as really precious. And if you're with somebody who's putting out your light, and you're putting out their light, because I don't think either of us were doing it on purpose. I think we'd just married exactly the person to give the other person a breakdown.
Yeah.
To make the other person feel absolutely worthless. We had extraordinary how people do that, isn't it? You pick exactly the person that's going to make you feel like you just shouldn't be alive, taking up space. And so, I made him feel awful just by being me, and he made me feel awful just by being him. And to continue in that was not successful. So yes. I suppose I would have said, I was thinking only in terms of morality as well, like what one should and shouldn't do. And I would have told myself to be less dogmatic and look at my definitions a bit more, I think.
Beautifully put. And to round this failure up, you are now dating someone who sounds lovely.
He is.
You were set up on a blind date.
By our mutual friend George.
Yes. Thrilled to hear that. Well done, George.
Well done, George.
And have you found the person who wants your light to spread?
I have. Lucky me, I have. And that's the thing. I was someone who likes what I do and encourages me in what I do and tries to free me up to do what I do. So I'm incredibly lucky, and I'm not sure I do enough of the same back. So that's the thing, is to make it, mutual. And
your second failure, which we've sort of touched on, is your failure to be, as you put it, TM, a serious actress.
Yeah.
So did you have ambitions to be a serious actress?
I thought I was a serious actress. I did. I thought I was.
People are shouting out, you are.
I am. Am I now?
Yeah.
Move on.
Yeah. Done.
Move on.
Tick.
Yeah, no, there's loads of, I would play Juliet and I would die and the audience would go, oh, bless. And we're like, what? What's this all about? I've always been slightly ridiculous. So I've wanted to be Barbie, but I'm kind of, the everything a pound shop Barbie. Bit rubbish Barbie where the limbs don't move, and maybe she's got strange fringe, only one outfit, it's nylon jumpsuit, And so I would, when I was auditioning to play these serious parts when I was starting out, I couldn't get any traction, couldn't get anyone interested. The minute I started doing comedy, I got an agent, I started getting jobs. But I felt somehow that this was a failure of depth. Like the gravitas thing, that there's something about me that is not deep or serious or received or something. There's another occasion where I auditioned for Terrence Davis. Do you know who that is? He's like one of our greatest filmmakers, sadly died a couple of years ago, Liverpudlian artist. He made very, very beautiful films. And I've done a lot of, mucking about and walking into walls, falling down wells, that kind of thing. Wearing fake beard on Portobello Road. I did it with panache. It was a career highlight. But I got the script and I was like, I can do this. This is a beautiful thing. And I think I can do this. And I learnt it and I rehearsed and I rehearsed and I rehearsed. And I went in and we got on well. And I was like, oh, this is great. And he said, well, do you want to read? And I went, yeah, well, how did you see the character? But I'd, of course, really, really prepared. And in the script, this character was very, very sunny. Emily Dickinson's best friend, who just shone like a ray of sunshine. And I was like, I know those people. I know she's manically depressed. There is no way. Like, I'm in comedy. I know that those people that tell those jokes, they're really depressed. And I said, how did you see her? And he said, oh, she's a ray of sunshine. I said, oh, but I thought she was probably like underneath that. He was like, no, she's just sunshine all the way down. And I just shouldn't have asked him. I should have just done it, because it probably would have, I don't know, it would have been okay. But anyway, I then couldn't do it, because I was trying then to do what he'd said, and I'd done something else, and it was really bad. And I said, sorry, can I do it again? And I tried to do it again, and it was, a bit better. And he said, and there were 3 scenes to perform, and he said, pretty much after the first one, sort of thank you very much and goodbye. And I was so shocked, because that actually never happens to me in person. I mean, in self-tapes, I think they just take one look at my mug and they go, no way. But when I'm in the room, normally, when it had never happened to me before. And I said, oh, so you don't want me to read the other scene? He said, no, I've seen enough, thank you. And I still might cry.
Yeah, I feel it for you.
And then he said, I can see I've really hurt you. Oh. I didn't mean to do that. Please forgive me. And he held his arms out. Yeah. And he hugged me, and that was awful. Yeah. So then this man was, my failure to have depth and seriousness had evoked pity. Yes.
But in a way, that's the biggest sign that you had depth and seriousness.
Oh, but it was awful. And I was in the casting director's house, and I went to the toilet and I cried for about 15 minutes. And that hasn't happened to me. And I've cried after a haircut. Never cried after an audition. Yeah. And then I went to my agents, and I was still crying, and I could not stop. And I was like, why is this? And I think it's because it was this thing that I longed to be. I used to do ballet when I was a kid. I loved it. And I got told to give up because I was too fat. I wasn't that fat.
Bloody hell.
And I just, have this image of myself watching Swan Lake at the Royal Opera House, this little tubby kid that was never going to get up there, wishing. And it feels a bit, I've got that little fat clown school person inside who longs to be someone beautiful, telling beautiful stories.
Sally, I want you to know that you are that person, that you are a beautiful person telling beautiful stories. Thank you. That's so moving. And
this is so embarrassing.
It's not embarrassing. It's so moving, and I want you to feel the audience here feeling you, because that, for me, is the most beautiful example of someone who has ploughed into their vulnerability and shared it, had the courage to share it. This is not a failure of courage. And in doing so has connected, which is what storytelling is. You are so successful at what you do, and you are so beloved for what you do. And I'm so sorry that you have been judged by men, because it sounds to me that there's a recurring theme, and I understand it because of the similar time we came of age, being a very different era, where there was a lot of misogyny, both externalized and internalized. And when I hear you speak about working with men or auditioning for men or having relationships with men, there's this theme of judgment. And when I hear you talk about working with women, like in Veep, there's this theme of support. And I wonder how much of that you feel played into it.
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, it was I'm much older than you. Bless you for saying we're the same age.
You're not.
Like I say, she's practically perfect in every way. Coming out with a lad, I mean, it was quite shocking being at university. And at university, I was in charge of all the men I knew. And then I came out, it was lad mag era. And that was a real shock. But I think there is something well, this is why I really approve of this podcast, the embracing your weaknesses, your weak bits. I remember reading George Saunders, who wrote Lincoln in the Bardo, writing about discovering his style. And he was really rubbish for ages because he was trying to write like Hemingway. And then he said he suddenly realized that he wrote a little comic thing and his wife really laughed. And he was like, he talks about it as standing on a pile of manure with a little flag in the top with his name on it. And it's like, well, it's not the Hemingway Mountain, it's this little pile of manure, but it has got a flag with my name in it on the top. And I think that's it, like having to embrace, well, not having to, I'm so lucky, comedy's such a great life. It's actually been really brilliant, but I hoped to be, Judi Dench at the RSC or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm not that, and I will never be that.
Well, I mean...
But I've had more fun,
Yes.
I've worn a beard on the Portobello Road.
First of all, it's never too late. Secondly, doing what you do, doing comedy the way that you do it, which is so full of subtlety and nuance and hilarity and profundity, that's how you get the deep messages across, because you make it accessible.
Well, I think you just have to do what you do. I mean, I don't have that body, that face, whatever. I have this body, this face, and this body, this face is a tiny bit ridiculous. And you work where you are, don't you? And it's good to make peace with that.
Before we go on to your third failure, and I know this is going to sound creepy, but I love your face and I love your body, and I don't want you to speak to yourself in that way. Yes. Your final failure is your failure to persuade the government to do an ethical review of non-invasive prenatal testing, which has a specific resonance for you. Explain to us what the NIPT is.
Well, it's misnamed for a start. I mean, it stands for non-invasive prenatal testing, as you said, but it's cell-free fetal and maternal DNA screening that has been introduced as part of the population screening pathway before birth. It identifies a few things. It's not diagnostic, so it gives you a probability, and it's added in on top of scans and blood tests. So you would already do a scan and a blood test, so you add in the NIPT. And we felt, as parents in the Down syndrome community, that this was introducing for-profit motives into population screening, and that it was being driven by profit motives and not by ethics. And we felt it was really important that the government commissioned an ethical review before allowing these big companies to come in and oversell this product. One way in which they oversell in the marketing is, for example, calling it non-invasive prenatal testing implies that it is of equal value to amniocentesis, whereas it's implying that it's non-invasive. Amniocentesis is a needle going into the amniotic sac. You take out some of the fluid, and you can find fetal DNA and maternal DNA, obviously, but fetal DNA in that, and you can sequence the baby's genome from that, actually, and find out lots about it. By calling it non-invasive prenatal testing, they're implying that it would replace amniocentesis. But actually, because it just gives you a probability, you still have to have the amniocentesis. For example, that'd be one way. Another way is that the literature would say there would be 1 in 100 chance of miscarriage with amniocentesis, whereas nowadays, most doctors in a good hospital, it would be 1 in 600, 1 in 700. So they're overselling the benefits of the test. And we weren't saying we can't have the test, we were just saying this is £425 per woman from an NHS that is cash-strapped, and you have to add it in, it's not replacing anything, and it's only really giving you a 3% improvement in accuracy. We don't believe that a Down syndrome outcome is so scary as to warrant this massive spend. So that's what we feel. We understand we're biased. Could you have a review? And we did everything in our power to encourage that. And although an ethical review was carried out by the Nuffield Trust, they announced the rollout of NIPT before that was done.
So your eldest son, Ollie,
has Down syndrome.
And you didn't know that before he was born?
No.
And the way that you were spoken to about it,
yes.
How would you characterise the tone in which doctors spoke to you about Ollie having Down syndrome?
Well, it's a twice told, they call it the twice told tale. So when you're pregnant, because you can terminate up to and including labour with Down syndrome. Doctors, when Ollie's 20 now, so all the pregnant, I don't know if they still are, but I expect they still have Down syndrome as one of your worst outcomes in pregnancy. And I have plenty of friends who, the minute the Down syndrome was identified, were offered terminations at every single appointment. And there's mothers who had on their notes, please do not mention termination to me again, and it would still be brought up. So we just do need to check. So there's very much a sense that if you're continuing, there was no pathway at all for you to continue your pregnancy, whereas there was support in place for you not to continue your pregnancy. And I suppose one of the things I have about this particular screen is that it's a frightening thing. Like when I had Ollie, I was scared. And the doctor said, I'm sorry, and the nurse cried. So that was pretty strong messaging. And then 2 weeks later, the social worker comes around and says, he's just like a normal baby. And you go, hang on. 3 weeks ago, I could have terminated him. The doctor said he was so sorry, and the nurse cried, but you were saying he's just like a normal baby. Like, which is it? So this twice told tale thing.
And Ollie, as you say, is now 20.
Ollie's now 20.
What's he like?
He's hilarious. Yeah, he's joyous and hilarious. He just got engaged for the 5th time. It was quite...
To Colin Firth, or...?
Not to Colin Firth, no. To actually, in the documentary, there was a mum
This is a documentary you made.
Sorry, I made a documentary in 2016. I got approached by a documentary company who said, we want to do a documentary. We've already sold the idea of a documentary about you and your child to BBC Two. And I'm like, what? Well, I haven't agreed. And I'm like, yeah, but do you think you could do it? And I asked my friend Jess, who used to make docs, I said, this seems a bit suspect. And she said, ask to see the pitch. So I said, can I see the pitch? And the pitch was Sally Phillips weeps as she tells us about how her tragic life has been completely ruined by her disabled son. And so I didn't do it with them, but I did start to think, well, there is something to make with this NIPT coming in. And so we made this documentary, World Without Down Syndrome, that was a sort of surface look at what was going on. And on that, I met another mum who was starting to talk to midwives to get them to speak, she had this great line of, my child isn't a risk, she's not a fire or a flood. So to get midwives just to say, you have a chance of Down syndrome rather than a risk of Down syndrome, your words really matter,
They do.
And so I met Hayley, who's now pretty much my best friend. And her daughter, Natty, was at the time 9 and is now 18. And she and Ollie have been going out for a year. And he went clubbing with her in Bristol on Thursday. And Hayley told me that Natty, her daughter, had stolen a ring from her house, brought it in a box, given it to Ollie, and made him propose to her in Bella Pasta.
Atta girl. I suppose I want to ask you what is potentially an impossible question, which is what parents...
They've been pretty hard thus far. Just knock yourself out, Elizabeth.
An easy one to end on. What has parenting Ollie given you?
Everything. He's freed me. He's freed me from the roadmap. You just throw the roadmap away. I remember coming back from the hospital and kind of looking at the baby Einstein. Secretly, I was going to really hothouse him. He was going to be a genius. I was going to pretend I was a normal parent, but actually, he was going to be reading the Iliad by the time he was 4, And I'd bought this baby Einstein playmat, because I was really going to, get his brain working. And I just cried. I was like, I should have just got the beige one I liked, the soft one. And then I thought, no, he's going to need that more than the others. And there was sort of key, I mean, I have spoken about it before, but I had this sort of key moment where I'd spent all morning swinging Ollie around the flat with a hand towel under his stomach, trying to teach him to crawl, because you had to teach everything. And we'd had a real laugh. I mean, he was a really gratifyingly good audience from a young age. And so we'd had this morning, and, my back was a bit sore, but then I put him in the sling, because sling's better for a baby's proprioception. And we went out, and there were these 2 mums on the bus with their buggies, and they were just complaining. They're going, he's such a nightmare, doesn't sleep, he's into everything, he's going to drink the bleach, I'm so tired, my marriage is over. And I just thought, I think we're having a lot more fun than you. And I began to more regularly just turn the standards of the societal standards upside down. And then they would appear to be the right way up. Do you know at all what I mean? Or am I talking nonsense?
No,
do you know what I mean?
You're talking such sense. And it strikes me that in Ollie, there is a man who is just full of acceptance for you.
Yeah, I mean, he just, I feel like he shows me, I mean, I have to say, I've got 2 other kids, they don't like me talking about them. That's why I don't talk about them or post about them on Instagram. I love them all the same. Of course. And they all teach me different things. So each one of them teaches me different things. But Ollie, just because the productivity thing, like Ollie's never going to pass an exam. And it's not because he's dumb, he just can't get going. He can't do the first question. So you're just freed from all of that pressure of where you're going to do, and you are literally going, how can you be happy? How can you be happy and earn enough money to, eat and see your friends? How are we going to do that? And that is what I should be doing with the other 2. Ollie, when he got a camera phone, the photos that he took were just really interesting. The things that mattered to him were the bin men and the postman. We've got a postman called Oliver, same name as him. And still, we've got different postmen now, but still, whenever I see Oliver, we just run at each other, give each other a really big hug. Ollie, I don't want to meet my neighbours. I'm not interested in being neighbourly. Ollie, some twins moved in the garden over the back from us, and this was quite a while ago. And the Down syndrome handbook says people with Down syndrome can't climb. Ollie did not get that memo. And Ollie just used to climb over the back wall and just sit in their garden in his pants. It was really so embarrassing. I mean, he could get over the fence and I couldn't get over the fence. And once he was over there, I couldn't get him back. So I kept on having to go all the way around and knock on the door and go, I'm so sorry, I think my child... And he would do it in the morning, like before we were awake, And he would be just sat in, and eventually they let him in, they were nice people. And we became friends, and there was a summer when we had the ladders up, and all the kids went over. And my youngest kid now plays in a football team with their youngest kid, and You know, he knocks down barriers.
Yes.
Yeah, he's just wonderful. And a nightmare. No, and a nightmare.
Yeah.
There was one morning where there was a ring on the doorbell at 5 a.m. and he had been expelled from school for lots of things, including hosing teachers with the vegetable to make friends. I mean, it was a great way. There's still someone in the hairdressers, Emily. Hello, Emily, if you're listening, who was at Ollie's school, who goes, legend. He hosed Mr. Myton and called him a lard head. But yeah, it was the police. So he felt that school had treated him unfairly, which they also had. Not with the hosing, that was fair, but another thing. And there were 2 policemen on the doorstep. And they said, do you know where your son is? And I went, no, but I think you do. And he was at that school, and we all went there together, and there was Ollie, and there was a massive, you know those traffic cones with concrete in the bottom? Yeah. He'd put one of those through a window with reinforced glass. He'd got it through the wire. Okay. And there was a circle of glass around him, and he'd cut his hand. And I said, Ollie, did you put that, and this was a long time ago, I have to say, did you put that traffic cone through that window? And he said, no.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. I think Ollie...
And then we're supposed to celebrate that, because learning to lie, that's a developmental stage.
Go, Ollie. I think Ollie can teach everyone here so much about putting ladders up against walls and just climbing over and connecting. And you, Sally Phillips, are such a beautiful example of that. I can't thank you enough for coming here with such an open heart and an open soul and being such a beautiful guest. Please give it up for the amazing, amazing Sally Phillips! Please do follow How to Fail to get new episodes as they land on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please tell all your friends. This is an Elizabeth Day and Sony Music Entertainment original podcast. Thank you so much for listening.